So who are we talking about? Well, we're talking about these people, but why does this little map matter? Well, let me show you something, because in a minute I'm going to describe something. Do you see some of these funny names up there? You know, Thrace, that's over on the Greek side, but Bithynia, Galatia, Cappadocia, Asia. Did you know those names are mentioned in the book of Acts? These are places that the Apostle Paul went, the Apostle Peter went. In fact, 1st and 2nd Peter are written to the elect scattered throughout Pontus, Galatia, Cappadocia, Asia, and Bithynia. That's the northern section. In fact, they're kind of clipped off the top of that map. Peter was writing to those people. James was writing to these people. Paul traveled through here 3 times writing to these people. John spent the end of his life parked in this area. That's why I call it the epicenter. There are more books of the New Testament written to this area than anywhere else. This is the epicenter, not only of Roman culture, but of God's desire to build Christ's church. So, now we're getting to my journal. This is our 6th lesson. Why some believers suffer loss at the Bema seat is what we're going to look at. And we're going to look at Thyatira. And when it comes to Thyatira, and that's, now we have to get to Revelation 2, verse 18. And let me get there with you. Revelation 2, verse 18. It says, "And to the angel, the messenger, the pastor, elder, teacher of the church in Thyatira." Thyatira. Boy, that's a strange word, isn't it? We only encounter it here and one other place in the book of Acts, because if you remember, Lydia, the seller of purple, whose heart the Lord opened in Philippi in Acts 16, was from here. And so, you know, it's a very limiting thing. But the term Thyatira is foreign outside this chapter. To get our bearings, we're going to the geographic area that received the most books of the New Testament. So what did I write? Verse 18. These are what you're doing in your little projects. This is what I did. Not this morning. I already had done this one. To the angel of the church in Thyatira write, "These things says the Son of God, who has eyes like a flame of fire, and his feet are like fine brass." And I stopped and I thought about that. And I wrote, "The unashamed life." Jesus reminds them he can see into their lives. That's his eyes of fire. "Thus nothing is hidden from him. He judges any sin allowed to stick around in our lives." Remember 1 John 2:28. So I remembered 1 John 2:28. Do you all remember 1 John 2:28? Have you thought about 1 John 2:28? Do you remember it when you read it a while back, whenever you had to read it for whatever class it was for, or just in your normal Bible readings? 1 John 2:28 says this, "And now, little children, abide in him, that when he appears we may have confidence and not be ashamed before him at his coming." Did you know the people that act like the Thyatirans, that was a church of believers, are going to be ashamed before Christ at his coming? They're going to be ones that go, "Oh, you know, well, they're not going to be like Jonathan Edwards." Remember what Jonathan Edwards, you know, the famous American Puritan preacher of righteousness and commentator and the president of Princeton and one of the greatest minds in American history, Jonathan Edwards, that one, "The Sinners in the Hands of the Angry God" one. Do you know what he said? Resolved. He wrote all these resolves in his journal. He was a journaler. "Resolved never to be found doing something that I wouldn't want to be doing on the moment Christ returns." He didn't want to be ashamed. That's a limiter. That limited me. When I married my wonderful wife, Bonnie, there was nothing I ever did with any other girl that I ever had. By the way, I dated 741 different girls before I met Bonnie. I dated them. I had their name, the dates I dated them, and I mean, I was a chart person. And I went to a Christian school that had 5,000, I don't know how many Christians there. Half of them were girls, and I was going to date them all, you know, and I was there a long time. Did you know in none of those 741 young ladies that I spent time alone with did I ever do anything that I would be ashamed before Bonnie or the Lord? Why? Because every day I thought, as I went out with this girl, now if I am on any part of this date and the Lord returns, there's nothing I want to be doing that would make me ashamed before Christ who's watching. And I knew that someday I would meet the one person in the whole world I wanted to spend all my time with, and I wouldn't want to be ashamed anytime I thought about what I used to do before I met her. He judges any sin that we allowed to stick around in our lives. That's his feet of brass. Secondly, today you're either advancing or retreating. Look at verse 19. This is what Jesus said. I have to get, not 1 John 2:19. That would have been a shocker for me to read to you. Revelation 2:19. I know your works, your love. By the way, this is the only church that he says commends them for their love. Wow. Of all the 7, Ephesus didn't have their first love, but this church, he says, I know your love. So these were saints. These were people that knew the Lord. I know your service. I know your faith. I know your patience. And as for your works, the last are more than the first. Now look what I wrote. Today you're either advancing or retreating. Jesus knows which way we're headed every day. And he knows whether our works are increasing or decreasing. You see how encouraging these letters are?